I'm not going to. This runs around the base of your brain and goes up and feeds cerebellum and the cerebrum and some of the pons and all that other business that's brain stuff. We call this the circle. Circle of, what you talking about? Willis. Circle of Willis. This one. There may be a new name for it now, but I've not heard it. Everyone still calls it the Circle of Willis. And that will feed the majority of your brain. Right here, by the way, just kind of an extra note, there's a great other place to have an aneurysm. This is basilar artery shoots its blood into a ring, which is a terrible idea for traffic, right? Don't try that in a traffic loop, because slam, 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 aneurysm. Pop, and then your brain's leaking. That'd be a problem. That's something you need to fix right now, or you're not going to live. That does happen to people immediately, and it's life or death instantly. So there's another place right here too, right? There's a lot of aneurysms right here. High pressure there. Okay, there's our little first drawing of arteries. Make sure you label that arteries. All these would be feeding the brain, the arms, the neck. I would get more specific, but this one's pretty easy to deal with actually with most people. Again, what should you do with this? If I were you, I'd learn to draw that and label it. If you can't do that, you will miss very little. You can do it your own way, but I promise you, if you do it this way, you will miss very little on naming these things. Remember, there's no picture of this. There's just descriptions of these things, but the picture is worth 1,000 words, did I say? I don't know. Okay, this is about to go bye. Let's do the veins now. Let's go from the brain back to the heart. Bye-bye, okay? Let's go blue, why not? They're veins. Okay, this one I usually mess up too, so let's not mess it up this time. Let's start up here with the big meat hook. Something like that. This part up here is not important. This one is to come. I did that poorly. That's okay. I'm not too interested in that top part. You can make that look as terrible as you want. Good news, symmetry. What is on the right is on the left. Just a little confusion here on the bottom. I really want to make this bottom part curvy. So I can label it up. Here's the heart. Beautiful. Okay, so here's the veins back. Nice and symmetrical. You could draw one half if you want. Like they did in that textbook. Anybody take Lachlan for AP1?
Yes.
Okay. You know some of this already. You survived. Very few people survive that. How many finished your class? I know one section you had 4 people finish. Okay. So, if you took Lachlan, you may have had to learn this section already. The superior sagittal sinus. Sinus. And the inferior sagittal sinus are here, here, and there, and there. And I'm not even going to really mention them. Those are called the sagittal sinus, or sinuses, we say in American. Should be sinus, sini, yeah, that's the correct term. We say sinuses, successes here. If you took AP1 with Lachlan, I'm sure he mentioned it somewhere. I don't get this far into it. And it has something to do with the ventricles and the circulatory system, but we're going to leave that alone. I'm more worried about what's down below that. So you have carotids going up. And remember, if you want to help yourself, blood is going down now in this picture. Obviously, if you stood on your head, it would continue to go the right way. the ground. So just remind yourself everybody's flowing back to the heart now. These are veins, they're headed toward the heart. Everybody here, the destination is the heart. Don't put too many arrows because I need to put some numbers in here. Okay, carotids go up. Carotids are arteries. There is no carotid vein. So what are the big veins that go down? No? Jugulars. Okay. So yeah, carotids go up, jugulars go down. How do you spell jugular? Jugular vein? No, don't do that ever again. What's a juggler? A guy that plays with his balls in public. Jugular. Don't jugular vein. I get that. I laugh every time. Jugular. Okay. No carotid, no jugulars. Carotid, jugular veins. Okay. So when you see a J up here, that's going to be a jugular. So let's do that. Let's very easily just say this is going to be called L-E-J. L-I-J. You don't even need numbers for this one, maybe. R-I-J. R-E-J. Instead of Rick and Wreck, now we have Ridge and Reg. Instead of Lick and Leck, we have Lidge and Ledge. So what do these stand for?
Left, external.
Right and left. Internal, external. Jugulars. That's it. Veins. Now on the carotid, I don't care if you put artery because I know all carotids are arteries. On the jugular, I don't care if you put vein because I know that all jugulars are veins. But for you, you might want to do it just so you get in the habit of putting artery, vein every time. But everybody knows that the jugulars are veins and the carotids are arteries. Go for the jugular, they say. Hell, if you want to kill them, go for the carotid. Don't wait for the jugular. Get in there first. So that's easy to deal with that. If I were use guys, I would put a green tube. Whoop, not there. Close to there. The corner here. A little arrow like that. It's got to be a green tube though. There we go. I always forget to do that, so I'm doing it right now. I'll explain what that is at the end. Okay. That was easy. Now what do we got? Well, it's very similar. Depends on where you start. You can start way up in the hand, you can get into here, but let's just go past the armpit. Armpit would be axillary vein. But let's just go to where we were earlier. So I'm not going to even use numbers. What do you suppose this is out here? That's analogous to where we just were a minute ago. Right side. So, claving. Yeah. But it's a vein now. I've taken up too much space with that probably. Right subclavian vein. And then over here, left subc. Vein. It's right in here where it starts to get messy. Right in this little. That's pretty easy right there for most people. I mean, jugulars and subclavians, okay, fine. It's way easier than the arteries. Remember that BC trunk that made the symmetry go foul? Here we have good symmetry, right here. This little tube right here. Right in there. That is left brachiocephalic vein. This is right brachiocephalic vein. Remember, there's only one brachiocephalic artery. It's a little stubby trunk. Here we actually have two, left and right brachiocephalic veins. It's the same street. It just changes its name all of a sudden when you get to this jugular. You pass the jugular, all of a sudden it becomes brachiocephalic veins.
I think you wrote it wrong, yeah.
Oh yeah, I just switched the L and the R. That happens a lot. Surprised that's the first time I did that. Happens on your test too, especially when you're going fast. So these two, and here's another good question I could ask, the two brachiocephalic veins merge to form something here. What's it called? You already know this. I hope it's called the superior vena cava. Right? I hope so. And that goes back into the heart on the right side. So that takes us back to the heart. That's what vein's supposed to do. This one's much easier to deal with, I think, than the arteries. It just looks symmetrical. So the VC trunk ruins people. It messes them up here too. If I'm asking you tubes on the test and I say name this tube right here by the heart, it's SVC. If I say name that tube and it's separated with a split, it's got to be one of the brachiocephalic veins. It can't be the vena cava. It's very picky. I'll show you that when we go over the models for the practical better, but you can stay after and I'll show it to you today in a quiz. Lots of people miss that. They get that bottom part there. They don't realize there's three things down there. There's two VCs and they merge to form that third guy. Okay, what are those green tubes? Lymph. So remember, we got to get lymph after it's all cleaned up back to the heart. You don't actually plug it straight into the heart though. So I want to show you where the two major, what are called ducts of the lymphatic system. And they always plug in right here at the junction of the internal jugular and the subclavian. That's why I drew it right here, the junction of the internal jugular and the subclavian, exactly where it's drawn. It's going to say this in the notes very clearly later. But the picture I'm showing now, we'll do the lymph next time, but I'll show you the picture now and then I'll remind you. Remember those two big green tubes you drew? Okay, on this side, this is called, and I get this backwards. I'm going to get this backwards. Because it's stupid. I believe this one's called the right lymphatic duct. What would the other one be called? That would be too easy then. Why would I be struggling with it? It must not be called that. It must be called something stupid. Thoracic duct. And I might have got them switched. Because it's that stupid. I believe the right is called the right lymphatic duct. And the left is not called the left. It's called thoracic duct. I could have got them backwards. I'm warning you again. I could have got those backwards. I don't think so. I could have. Okay, there we go. There's the two main lymphatic tubes. After we go through the nodes and clean everybody up and you have clean lymph and you want it to get back to the heart, put it back in the blood, specifically at the junction of the internal jugular and the subclavian on either side. Okay, there's that picture. Been here an hour and a half? Is that for real? Yeah, let's go home already. Okay, who's in charge of this? Let's go. Next one. In the tank. Let's do some arteries, more arteries. Because they're fun. Anybody going into sonography? I don't want to pay attention to that. I know, because I had a sonography student call me up one day and say, hey, can you send me that thing about the prostitutes? I said, sure. So here it comes, you get it too. So here's what we're about to do. Oh, okay, what is that up there? What are these three tubes? Do we know them already? Yeah. What's the first one? The brachiocephalic trunk or artery. The second one is the left common carotid artery, and this one is the left subclavian artery. And this is the here? Descending aorta. This is the aorta, right? This one goes way out here to the aorta. So this is the descending aorta. What you can do is, you can keep going with this idea. And I usually don't ask this, but I'm going to draw it anyway. When you go past the rib somewhere, you're going to break off into a whole bunch of little arteries. Each one's going to serve a rib. They're going to go in between the ribs. What's the word for in between the ribs? Yeah, these are the intercostal arteries. I probably will never ask you that. Just remember, no, it's not intercoastal. We're not driving on the highway. Intercostal arteries, a bunch of them, going to the individual ribs. I mean, rib muscles. Possibly ribs too, I don't really know. Okay, that's fine, but what I'm more important here on this picture is, hey, there's eventually this big giant sheet that separates top from bottom. What's that big giant sheet called? The big D, right? The big diaphragm. We have to go through there. We have to get through the diaphragm. This thing has to drop down through it. And so do other structures. They're big giant, well, big vein's gonna have to come up through there at some point. Nerves and plexus you have to go through there. There's a lot of things going through that, what we call a hiatus. We'll see that later. But once we get under here, we're not called the descending aorta anymore. Now we're in the abdomen. So we're going to abdomen now. We're in the abdominal aorta. The part of the aorta underneath the diaphragm. And we need to know the branches of the abdominal aorta now and the organs they serve. And if you go to sonography, one of your quizzes is they'll actually have a sonography thing going, and you have to name all these as you go across them. And if you know the prostitute thing, it helps you keep it in order. So let's draw a picture on the abdominal aorta. This is just a sketch of where we're about to go. We're going down here now. The next picture, the diaphragm is going to be right at the top, and we're going to drop the abdominal aorta down and learn the 12 branches, something like that. I don't know the actual number, never counted, but it was about 10 or 12. So let's do that. Let's get rid of this little caveman sketch and go underneath now into the abdominal aorta. This is usually just called the descending aorta still, until you pass the diaphragm, then we'll call it the abdominal. All right. Beautiful. Let's do it. So this one's a little weird. The picture gets a little weird, so let me, again, draw for a minute, and then you can... I'm going to make the aorta very big here so I can draw inside of it. Make a Christmas tree here. It's going to be branches coming out. The thing you want to really worry about is some of these branches are not paired. This first branch is paired. And if I talk about on a test, I'll talk about a paired branch. First branch is paired, means we'll have a left and a right. The second branch is not paired. That's weird for most people. It's kind of like a trident. But then that third fork has another little fork coming out of it. Again, I didn't make this, I'm just showing you the way it is. This will be useful later in our digestive chapter as well. This is one reason I draw it. Again, if there's no pictures of this on the test, but if you can draw it, you will win the game. There is no other side pitchfork. Left side only. Okay, keep going downtown. Have another paired branch. Like that. Down a little bit more. This is going to be a weird one. So wait a second. Okay, there's no box on the other side. You got the two little sprigs, but no box. Another unpaired structure. Okay, then coming down here, we go dash, 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 dash. Two of them. Stick a leg out. Stick a leg out. Put some hanging down here. There you go. Two, three, four, five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Straight branches, and there's a few side tails here. So I don't know how you count them all up, but there's somewhere between 10 and 15. And then you know the order. And then you need to also know if I say paired branch or unpaired branch. I mean, if I say what's the second paired branch, it's these guys, right? Second paired branch. Alright, so just listen for the tricks in the words. A lot of people say that that one was written weird. Well, I'm giving you some hints here. Okay, so let's do our mnemonic device so we can remember. prostitutes. Is it on the screen? Nope. There's some prostitutes tonight. Apologies to any prostitutes in the room. Libertarian, hey, do what you want. Just don't bring it to my house. Prostitute. How do you spell prostitute? I don't spell that word too often. Check memo. Prostitutes. Who does that? Politicians. Prostitutes cause sore, swollen, red testicles. Amen. Some don't have those testicles. Some watch the news. Living in sin. Prostitutes cause sore, swollen, red testicles, and men living in sin. The amen is in parentheses because it's a double mnemonic. It's a mnemonic within a mnemonic. First letter tells you the first name of each of the branches. Let's go in order. Some of the roots you'll recognize immediately, some you may not. I'll have to tell a little side story. I'll tell you about purple. Prostitutes, P. Paired branch. Phrenic, artery. They're all arteries. Remember, these are branches of the abdominal aorta. They're all arterial. They're all flowing out away. Draw this too here while I'm saying it. This little box here, it's not going around the circle. That would be a vein in this picture. It's going here, it's going out here. It doesn't come around the bend. You just got two big pipes going to the same place. So it looks like a cul-de-sac. It is a cul-de-sac technically, but you don't go around a circle there. Phrenic. Diaphragm is phrenic. That's the root for phrenic. Unless you're in psychology. And they say phrenia for mind, schizophrenia. But that's psychology. I don't know what they do. Phrenic. Phrenic nerve. No, phrenic nerve works too, but these are phrenic arteries. Feeding the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle. It's got to be fed with blood. Phrenic nerve. Which of the following arteries feeds the diaphragm? Phrenic artery. C, cause. I know there's a little few adjectives here. You shouldn't put a string of adjectives in a mnemonic ever because you can get them mixed up. But this is called the celiac branch. Celiac branch is a left side structure only. It's unpaired. Celiac artery, that's the main one coming off, but it splits into G, H, S. And this little dude's P coming off of S. Okay, you've probably heard of celiac disorder, perhaps. Has something to do with what? Food, right? Gluten, so forth. Gluten is terrible for you, by the way. That is not a myth, that gluten destroys your guts. I'll show that later. It's horrible for you, by the way. It tastes gross to eat non-gluten food for me, but it's ripping me apart. And you. So if this has to do with food, what might these mean? Come on. Gastric, I hope. What's that go to? I hope the stomach, right? We know these roots, don't we? H. Come on. Hepatic, yeah. What's the S? Yeah, so splenic. And the P. Pancreatic, yeah. It's not pachyderm. You can narrow it down usually on these tests. Gastric, hepatic, and splenic, those are the main ones, right? GHS. But you see the pancreatic is a branch of the splenic. It's bizarre, but that's the way it is. Okay, no problem. So the real branch is celiac. All those others are branches of the branches of the branches. Celiac is the main one. Okay, so another S? No. Yeah, it is. So we call them adrenal glands. But back in the day, they used to call them suprarenal glands, which is dumb. But all we know is suprarenal is the same as adrenal. So we have to feed the adrenal glands with blood tubes. So we feed the adrenal glands with the suprarenal arteries. They are paired. There's a left, there's a right, because there's a left and there's a right. Adrenal gland. That doesn't supply the kidneys. That's later, further down. We get the hats on top now. These are the suprarenal arteries left and right. Okay. This is where it gets a little weird here. I'm going to put S. We know it's going to be an S. Then I'm going to put an M here. Then I'm going to drop down to past the R, past the T, and I'm going to put IM in the parentheses. Right here, the two red arrows are IM and SM. So it gets a little weird here. It still fits. Swollen SM or S. In men, IM. It's also going to give us a hint here for the other gender. Okay, so what does this have to do with? Well, let me show you. There must be something big over here. Right? And I'm going to kind of cheat, but roll around on the floor tonight for your homework and tell me if your guts get all tangled up. They don't get all tangled up, or you'd be in trouble. And you roll around on the floor more than you think about, especially when you're a kid, right? If your guts got all tangled every time you did that, you'd be in trouble. So if you cut the guts open, you'll notice there's this big layer of fat. Some of it's stored fat. Some of it's actually a structure that holds your guts in place. What's that thing called? Does anybody know? It's in the mid-gut, mes for middle. And the root for guts is enter. You should always see this now. Entero, enteric. Enteritis is diarrhea, right? Mesenteric, midgut. The midgut, there's some kind of fatty blanket holding your organs in place. We'll see it in the digestive chapter. It's large. It's large enough that you have to have supply to it. So that's going to supply the mesentery, which is just that form, and the intestines. We'll clear that up later when we get to portal systems, but that's where that's going, to the mesentery, that sheet holding the guts down, and large intestine and so forth. We'll clear that up later, but that's good enough for now. So the top one is called the superior mesenteric artery, and the bottom is called the inferior mesenteric artery. Whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. Okay, that's what those two have to do with. Again, it's not a loop. We're going to go in the direction of the red arrow, then we're going to flow out the purple arrow to the mesentery and the intestines. We'll come back in a vein, but that story gets twisted. Okay. These here, gastric, hepatic, pancreatic, splenic, and the mesenterics, those right there will form what we're going to call hepatic portal system much later. Oops. Way bad. Heptal? What is that? 7 or something? Okay, what am I trying to write? Hepatic portal system. So we're going to talk about that in the digestive chapter. But when we get back there, if you have that note, you'll remember that. Those arteries play something to do with the hepatic portal. If you know about it, you know it's kind of a lie, but I'm helping you here for the future. Hepatic portal has to do with gastric, hepatic, splenic, pancreatic, and mesenterics. Okay, now let's deal with the rest of the holes, which are pretty simple to deal with. So let's go back up to the thing here. Got to have an R for red. Then I need a T, the testicles. So now let's hit the kidneys. Renal. Suprarenal is up above. There's renal. Left and right kidney. Okay, so we got a left and right branch. The next one, this is the trick. Again, you could use the N-min with this. It could be called testicular in men. Right? Of course, in women, it would be not called the testicular, but what?
Ovarian.
Ovarian. So you could call that the testicular artery in men, or the ovarian artery in women. But what if you just wanted to call it one word? Gonadal would work just fine. It doesn't fit in our little rhyme, but you could call that the gonadal artery, and then you cover both bases. I don't care which one you put. I'm asking for the 1, 2, 3, 4th paired branch to the testicular ovarian gonadal. Okay, down here we got the, who's next? L, the lumbars. Probably not an issue. There's multiple, I don't know how many, 4 or 5, I don't know exactly how many. Down to the lumbar vertebrae are. when you head out to the thighs, what's the word for the upper thighs? It starts with an I. Iliac, yeah. Iliac arteries. Eventually, they would become, I'm not going to go there, but you could eventually become femoral, patellar, tibial, all the way down. And then hanging down here is not scrotal, but sacral. Sacral for the sacrum portion, sacral portion of the vertebral column. There you go. There's the prostitute thing. Again, what do you do with this? If you can draw that and label it, you will miss nothing on the sections. So get in practice of doing that. There's no picture of this again. There's no picture of it, but the idea is worth a lot of points. I'm going to have a big matching section on these vessels. It'll be like 27 questions. So it'll be easy, but you guys know what you're doing. Okay, I think we got it done. Let me make sure. Yeah, I don't see anything else. Okay, next time, lymph. I would bring your immunology with you because lymph doesn't take more than 20 minutes. So bring that immunology stuff because that's way harder, and we'll get into that next time. At this point, stay and do what you need to do. If you need to talk about grades or something, come do that. I think most of you have seen them. Test is in the future. So, do what? Question, problems? All right, let's go home. Come lights. I'll tell you if you have any problems. You want to draw on the board or work with the model or whatever you got. Come to me and I'll try to find something to help you. Okay.